Before we delve into this unsettling tale, please be advised that this story explores themes of psychological suspense and community control that some listeners may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Imagine your dream home. Not just any house, but the house. The one with the perfect porch swing, the meticulously manicured lawn, the scent of fresh-cut grass on a summer evening. The kind of place you see in movies where life is idyllic and worries melt away. That's what Jessica and Michael thought they'd found in Whispering Pines Estates. It was a picture-perfect community nestled just outside of Phoenix, Arizona, a sprawl of terracotta roofs and emerald green lawns, all sparkling under the relentless desert sun. Brand new, meticulously planned, and with a surprisingly affordable price tag for a young couple who had only ever rented cramped apartments. Jessica, a graphic designer with an eye for detail, had fallen in love with the craftsman-style architecture. Michael, an engineer, was more pragmatic, but even he couldn't deny the allure of the community pool, the private park, and the promise of quiet, safe streets. They'd spent months saving, dreaming, and touring. When their offer on 142 Sycamore Lane was accepted, it felt like the universe had finally aligned. This was it, their forever home, their fresh start. The closing was a blur of signatures and legal jargon, a mountain of paperwork that felt less like a hurdle and more like a celebratory formality. Their real estate agent, a perpetually cheerful woman named Carol, had assured them everything was standard. Just the usual HOA stuff, she chirped, handing them a thick binder. Rules, regulations, community guidelines. Nothing you haven't seen before. They moved in on a sweltering July afternoon, the air thick with the scent of new paint and possibility. Boxes piled high, they celebrated their first night with takeout pizza on the floor, surrounded by the echoes of their own excitement. It wasn't until a week later, with most of their belongings unpacked and the initial euphoria settling into a comfortable routine, that Jessica finally tackled the infamous HOA binder. Michael was sprawled on the couch, engrossed in a baseball game, while Jessica, ever the diligent one, sat at their new dining table, methodically flipping through pages. She skimmed the bylaws about trash collection schedules, landscaping requirements, and approved exterior paint colors. Standard stuff, just as Carol had promised. A little restrictive, perhaps, but that was the trade-off for perfectly manicured lawns and pristine streets. Then she found it. It wasn't highlighted. It wasn't bolded. It was tucked away in the back, under a section titled Enforcement and Remediation, almost like an afterthought. Article 17, Section D, Final Resolution of Resident Non-Compliance. Jessica's brow furrowed. The heading itself was dry, bureaucratic. She read the first few lines, expecting something about fines or forced landscaping. But what followed, it wasn't about fines. In cases where a resident's persistent and egregious violations of the community covenants and bylaws remain unrectified after all standard disciplinary actions and appeals have been exhausted, she read aloud, her voice a little louder than intended, pulling Michael's attention from the game. And where said violations are deemed to pose an unresolvable and severe detriment to the safety, harmony, and inherent value of Whispering Pines Estates, the association reserves the right to implement a definitive and irreversible cessation of residency and all associated rights and privileges within the community. This measure is considered absolute and final, Michael grunted. Sounds like they can kick you out if you don't paint your fence. Overkill, but whatever. He turned back to the game, but Jessica didn't. Her fingers traced the words on the page. No, Michael, listen to this part again, she insisted, her voice tight with a sudden, inexplicable dread. Definitive and irreversible cessation of residency. That doesn't just sound like eviction. Eviction means you move out. This sounds permanent, irreversible, and all associated rights and privileges within the community? What does that even mean? It's not just about the house, it sounds like it's about you. Michael sighed, pausing the game. Jess, it's legal speak. They probably just mean if you're a menace, they can force you to sell your house and leave, and you can never buy back into the community. It's extreme, sure, but it's probably for like serial arsonists or something. He walked over, peering over her shoulder at the document. See, unresolvable and severe detriment. They're talking about really bad stuff. But Jessica shook her head, a cold knot forming in her stomach. No, Michael. Cessation of residency is one thing. Irreversible cessation of residency is another. And all associated rights and privileges? It's like they're erasing you, as if you never existed here, as if you can't exist here. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with an unease that was rapidly escalating into fear. What if definitive and irreversible cessation isn't just about leaving the community? What if it's about leaving everything? The baseball game's cheerful chatter was now a distant, hollow sound. A silence descended on their new dining room, heavy and suffocating. The air, once filled with the promise of their future, now felt charged with an unspoken question. A chilling, ominous question that hung in the air. What exactly did the Whispering Pines Estates Homeowners Association mean by definitive and irreversible cessation of residency? And why did it feel so much like a death sentence? The first thing Michael did was rub his eyes hard. He blinked, refocused, and stared at the words again, as if willing them to change. Definitive and irreversible cessation of residency. It was there, stark and unyielding, nestled innocently between clauses about landscaping and exterior paint colors. He felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. This wasn't some abstract legal term he was overlooking. This felt personal, menacing. He reread the entire section, his mind scrambling for any context, any mitigating phrase. There was nothing. Just the chilling declaration that should a homeowner meet the criteria for this cessation, their property would immediately revert to the HOA, and all claims, financial or otherwise, would be null and void. No compensation, no appeal, just gone. "Jessica," he called out, his voice tighter than he intended. She was in the kitchen, unpacking the last box of ceramic mugs. "Can you come here for a second?" She walked in, a bright, optimistic smile on her face, still buzzing with the excitement of their new home. "What's up, honey? Did you find the remote for the garage door opener?" He shook his head, pushing the thick binder across the coffee table towards her. His finger pointed to the offending paragraph. "Read this. Section 4, subsection C." Jessica's brow furrowed slightly as she leaned over the binder. Her smile slowly faded, replaced by a look of growing confusion, then concern. She read it once, then again, her lips moving silently. "Definitive and irreversible cessation of residency," she murmured aloud, her voice losing its earlier cheerfulness. What does that even mean?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Michael said, running a hand through his hair. "It sounds final, like beyond final, like if you leave you can never come back, and they just take your house." Jessica straightened up, a nervous laugh escaping her. "Oh, come on, Michael. It's probably just legal jargon. You know, to prevent people from abandoning their homes and sticking the HOA with the bill. Like if you move out and don't pay your dues, they can seize the property. It's probably just a fancy way of saying foreclosing." "But irreversible cessation of residency?" Michael countered, shaking his head. "Why not just say foreclosure or property abandonment? Why such a dramatic, almost absolute phrase? And why no mention of compensation? It says all claims, financial or otherwise, would be null and void. That's not how foreclosure works. You still have equity, even if it's minimal." He could see the seed of doubt beginning to sprout in Jessica's mind. Her eyes darted back to the document, then around their still bare living room. The afternoon sun, which had felt so warm and inviting moments ago, now seemed to cast long, unsettling shadows. Okay, you have a point," she conceded, her voice softer now. "It does sound a bit extreme. Maybe it's just a poorly worded clause. Let's look it up. There has to be some explanation for this." They spent the next hour hunched over Michael's laptop, typing various permutations of the phrase into search engines. HOA definitive irreversible cessation residency, legal meaning cessation residency, weird HOA clauses. The results were largely unhelpful. They found countless articles on standard HOA regulations, property abandonment laws, and even a few sensationalized stories about HOAs gone rogue over gnome statues or fence height. But nothing, absolutely nothing, that mirrored the specific, chilling language of their Whispering Pines Estates contract. There were a few vague forum posts on obscure legal advice sites, mostly from people asking about unusual clauses in their own contracts. One post, buried deep in a thread from 5 years prior, caught Michael's eye. A user named Concerned Homeowner 87 had written, "My HOA contract has a clause about permanent cessation of occupancy and loss of all property rights. Does anyone know if this is even legal? My lawyer just laughed it off, but it gives me the creeps." The thread had no definitive answers, just a mix of legal speculation and dismissive comments. It offered no comfort, only a faint echo of Michael's own growing unease. This is ridiculous, Jessica finally said, pushing away from the laptop. There's nothing. It's like this phrase doesn't exist anywhere else. Exactly, Michael replied, his jaw tight. Which makes it even stranger. If it were standard legal boilerplate, it would be all over the place. So what do we do? She asked, looking at him with wide, worried eyes. We call them, he said, picking up his phone. We call the HOA office. They have to explain this. He found the number for the Whispering Pines Estates Homeowners Association in the binder. It was a local number, not a national corporate line, which somehow made it feel both more accessible and more insular. He dialed, bracing himself. The phone rang 3 times before being answered by a chipper, automated voice. Welcome to Whispering Pines Estates Homeowners Association. Our office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Please hold for the next available representative. It was already 4:30 p.m. He hoped they weren't about to close. The hold music was an annoyingly cheerful generic instrumental, completely at odds with the knot of dread in his stomach. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 5 minutes, a woman's voice, cool and professional, came on the line. Whispering Pines Estates HOA, this is Ms. Albright. How may I help you? Yes, hello, Ms. Albright. Michael began, trying to keep his voice steady. My name is Michael Thompson. My wife Jessica and I just closed on 142 Sycamore Lane. We're new residents. Welcome to Whispering Pines, Mr. Thompson, she replied, her tone perfectly pleasant, almost rehearsed. We're so glad to have you join our community. Thank you, Michael said, cutting to the chase. I'm calling about a specific clause in the HOA agreement we signed. Section 4, subsection C. It refers to definitive and irreversible cessation of residency. We're a little confused by the wording, and we're hoping you could clarify it for us. There was a fractional pause on the other end, barely perceptible, but Michael noticed it. The pleasantness in Miss Albright's voice seemed to stiffen, just a fraction. Ah yes, Section 4, subsection C, she said, her voice now a shade flatter, more formal. That's a standard clause, Mr. Thompson. It simply outlines the terms under which a property might revert to the association in cases of permanent departure or abandonment. But definitive and irreversible, Michael pressed. And it states all claims, financial or otherwise, would be null and void. That seems very extreme. Most abandonment clauses allow for some kind of compensation or due process, even if the property is seized. Why such absolute language? Ms. Albright's response was immediate and practiced. Mr. Thompson, the language is designed to ensure the integrity and stability of our community. It clarifies that once a resident permanently ceases to reside in their home, their obligations and rights regarding that specific property within Whispering Pines Estates are definitively concluded. This prevents ambiguity and ensures smooth transitions for the community. But what constitutes definitive and irreversible cessation? Michael asked, feeling increasingly frustrated. Is it simply moving out? Or is there something more to it? What if we wanted to sell our home? Would that be considered a cessation? Selling your home to another approved resident, Mr. Thompson, is certainly not a cessation, she replied, a hint of patronizing patience creeping into her tone. That would be a transfer of residency. A cessation refers to a permanent departure without a valid transfer of ownership within the community's guidelines. It's essentially a legal safeguard against properties being left in limbo, unmaintained, or without a clear owner. But the irreversible part, Jessica interjected, leaning closer to the phone, her voice hushed but firm. It sounds like you can't ever come back, even if you wanted to. And the part about all claims being null and void, that's what really worries us. Albright sighed, a faint, almost imperceptible sound, as if she'd answered this question 1,000 times. Look, Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson, I understand legal documents can be intimidating, but I assure you this clause is purely administrative. It ensures that the HOA can maintain its standards and manage properties effectively should a resident permanently vacate their home without proper procedure. It's not meant to be punitive unless a resident flagrantly disregards their responsibilities. But what are the exact parameters for definitive and irreversible cessation? Michael insisted, unwilling to let it go. Is there a specific duration of absence? A certain action that triggers it? We just want to understand the exact conditions under which we could lose our home and all our investment without any recourse. There was another pause, longer this time. Michael could almost hear Ms. Albright choosing her words carefully. Mr. Thompson, as I've explained, it pertains to a permanent departure without a valid transfer. The specifics are outlined in the full legal agreement, which you have signed. But it's not specific in the agreement, Ms. Albright, Michael countered, his patience wearing thin. It uses vague, ominous language. We just want a clear definition. I'm afraid I cannot provide a more detailed legal interpretation over the phone, Mr. Thompson, she said, her voice now clipped and final. For any further legal inquiries, I would advise you to consult with your own attorney. Is there anything else I can help you with today? The conversation was clearly over. Michael felt a wave of frustration mixed with a deepening sense of unease. He knew he wouldn't get any more answers from her. No, that will be all, Ms. Albright, he said, defeated. Excellent. Welcome again to Whispering Pines. Have a wonderful day. And with a click, she was gone. Michael slowly lowered the phone. He looked at Jessica, whose face mirrored his own growing anxiety. She gave us nothing, just boilerplate responses and stonewalling. It's like she was trained to answer that specific question without actually answering it, Jessica observed, her arms wrapped around herself. And the way she said, permanently vacate their home without proper procedure. What proper procedure? And what if someone can't follow proper procedure? A new chilling thought struck Michael. What if definitive and irreversible cessation of residency isn't about choosing to leave? What if it's about something else? He walked to the window, looking out at the meticulously manicured lawns and the perfectly uniform houses of Whispering Pines Estates. The silence, which had seemed so peaceful when they first arrived, now felt heavy, almost watchful. He noticed a few neighbors out walking dogs or watering plants, but none met his gaze. They seemed to be in their own worlds, almost deliberately avoiding eye contact. Was it just small-town reserve or something more? The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, but the beauty of it was completely lost on Michael. He felt a growing sense of being trapped, of having unknowingly stepped into a perfectly constructed cage. The clause, once a mere curiosity, had transformed into a looming shadow, an unanswered question that whispered of something far more sinister than legal jargon. He couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't just bought a house, they had bought into a secret. And the price of that secret might be everything they owned and perhaps even more. The air in the house suddenly felt heavy, suffocating. He realized he was holding his breath, waiting for something. Waiting for an answer that wasn't coming, or perhaps, for a truth he wasn't ready to hear. The death clause, as he was now calling it in his head, wasn't just a threat to their property. It was becoming a threat to their peace of mind, an insidious poison seeping into the foundation of their new life. And he had a terrifying premonition that this was only the beginning. The premonition clung to Michael like a shroud, a chilling weight on his shoulders even as the morning sun streamed through their kitchen window. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, tried to dismiss his fears, attributing them to the stress of moving and the absurdity of the HOA's demands. She buttered a piece of toast, her movements calm, almost annoyingly so, in the face of his growing dread. "It's just Martha, Michael," she'd said yesterday evening, as he paced their living room, replaying Richard's condescending tone. "She's a busybody. Every community has one. We'll just fix the fence, paint the mailbox, whatever it is they want, and then we can get back to normal." But Michael knew with a certainty that gnawed at his gut, that normal had packed its bags and left Oakhaven the moment they signed the closing papers. He looked out at the meticulously manicured lawn, the identical houses bathed in the same artificial glow of perfection, and shivered despite the warmth. This wasn't just about property values or aesthetic conformity. There was a deeper, more chilling current flowing beneath Oakhaven's pristine surface. The next few days were a blur of petty, escalating annoyances. A notice arrived about the precise shade of their porch light. Apparently, their warm white LED was non-compliant with the community's standardized exterior illumination guidelines, which mandated a cooler, almost sterile daylight white. Then, a stern email from Richard informed them that the small ceramic garden gnome Sarah had placed discreetly among her petunias was an unapproved lawn ornament, and must be removed within 24 hours or face a daily fine. Sarah's patience, usually boundless, began to fray. "A garden gnome?" she exclaimed, holding up the email with trembling hands. "It's 2 inches tall. You can barely see it. Are they staking out our house, Michael?" Is that what this is? Michael felt a grim satisfaction at her dawning realization, though it was quickly overshadowed by his own deepening unease. I think so, Sarah. I think they are. He started noticing things. The white van, ostensibly belonging to a landscaping company, that seemed to drive by their house just a little too slowly, a little too often. The way their next-door neighbor, Eleanor, an elderly woman with kind eyes and a perpetually worried expression, would quickly avert her gaze whenever Michael caught her looking their way from her porch. He even caught himself checking the bushes, scanning the rooftops, searching for hidden cameras, a paranoia he'd never known he possessed. One afternoon, while Sarah was at work, Michael decided he couldn't just sit there and let the anxiety consume him. He needed answers. He started with the internet, typing Oakhaven HOA complaints into the search bar. The results were surprisingly sparse. A few minor gripes about slow maintenance requests, a couple of comments about strict rules, but nothing that hinted at the oppressive atmosphere he was experiencing. It was almost too clean, too quiet, as if any dissenting voices had been systematically scrubbed away. He then broadened his search, looking for Oakhaven community history, original developers Oakhaven, anything that might shed light on the area. He learned that Oakhaven was a relatively new development, established about 15 years ago, built on what used to be a sprawling, privately owned estate. The developer, a company called Sterling Group, had a reputation for creating upscale, highly regulated communities. Nothing inherently suspicious, but the lack of any significant historical data felt odd for a place that projected such an air of established order. His gaze fell upon a stack of old community newsletters Sarah had picked up from the HOA office when they first moved in, tucked away on a shelf. He pulled them down, dusty and slightly yellowed, and began to flip through them. Most were mundane. Announcements for bake sales, reminders about trash collection days, profiles of new residents. But as he went further back, towards the earlier editions, a pattern started to emerge. He noticed gaps, not in the numbering but in the resident profiles. Some issues would introduce a new family, gushing about their excitement to join the Oakhaven community. Then a few issues later, there would be no mention of them, no farewell, no "we wish the Smiths well on their new adventures." They simply vanished from the pages, replaced by another eager new family. It was subtle, almost imperceptible if you weren't looking for it, but to Michael's now hyper-aware mind it screamed. He found an article from about 7 years ago, buried deep in one of the oldest newsletters. It was a short, almost dismissive piece about the sudden, unexpected passing of a beloved former HOA board member, a Mrs. Agnes Periwinkle. The tone was saccharine, but the brevity struck Michael as strange. No details about the cause, no funeral arrangements mentioned, just a quick eulogy about her dedication to the community. He cross-referenced it with online obituaries but found nothing. It was as if Agnes Periwinkle had existed only within the meticulously curated pages of Oakhaven's internal communications. That evening, as dusk settled, Michael decided to take a walk. Not a casual stroll but a reconnaissance mission. He walked past Eleanor's house. She was on her porch, watering a small potted plant, her back to him. As he approached, he cleared his throat gently. She jumped, startled, nearly dropping her watering can. "Oh, Michael, you scared me." Her voice was soft, reedy. "My apologies, Eleanor. Just out for an evening walk." He paused, trying to gauge her. "Everything all right?" She wrung her hands. Yes, fine. Just admiring the petunias." She gestured vaguely at her own flower beds, though her eyes darted nervously towards her front door. Michael decided to push a little. "You know, Sarah and I have been having a few issues with the HOA. Little things mostly. The porch light, a garden gnome." He offered a wry smile, hoping to elicit a shared moment of exasperation. Eleanor's smile was weak, almost a grimace. "Oh yes. The rules. They're very particular here. Always have been." She lowered her voice, leaning in conspiratorially. "My husband, Arthur, God rest his soul, he used to say they had an answer for everything. An explanation for every blade of grass, every misplaced pebble." She looked around as if checking for listeners, then back at Michael, her eyes wide with a fragile fear. "He used to joke about the bylaws. Said they even had a clause for how you breathed." Michael felt a chill run down his spine. "A clause for how you breathed?" he prompted, keeping his voice steady despite the sudden spike in his heart rate. Eleanor nodded, her gaze distant. "Not literally, of course, But he'd pore over those documents, the original ones. He was a stickler for details, Arthur was. Always said you had to know what you were signing up for. He'd spend hours in his study, muttering about the fine print, the hidden stipulations. He found it all very amusing at first. Her voice trailed off, a shadow passing over her face. And then, Michael pressed gently, sensing he was on the verge of something significant. She shook her head, a tear welling in her eye. Then he stopped finding it amusing. He started getting angry, furious even. Said he'd unearthed something truly unconscionable, something that went beyond ridiculous rules and fines. He called it the ultimate control mechanism, a way to ensure absolute conformity, even in death. Michael's blood ran cold. Even in death. The phrase echoed in his mind, linking directly to his nascent fears, to the missing residents in the newsletters, to Agnes Periwinkle. Absolute conformity, even in death? He repeated, his voice barely a whisper. What did he mean, Eleanor? What did Arthur find? Eleanor looked at him, her eyes filled with a deep, consuming sorrow and fear. I don't know, Michael. He never told me the specifics. He said it was too dangerous. Said if anyone found out he knew, we'd both be in trouble. He just kept saying, there's a clause, Eleanor. A death clause. And it's real. She clutched her watering can tightly, her knuckles white. Then, a week later, he had his accident. Fell down the stairs. The HOA was very sympathetic. Very helpful. Arranged everything. But I always wondered. Her voice cracked. He was so careful, Arthur. So precise. And he'd never fallen before. Not once in 50 years. A cold, hard knot formed in Michael's stomach. This wasn't just a busybody HOA. This wasn't about garden gnomes or porch lights. This was about something far more sinister, something that had claimed Arthur, and perhaps countless others. He looked at Eleanor, her face etched with years of unspoken terror, and knew with absolute certainty that her husband had stumbled upon the dark heart of Oakhaven. And now Michael was treading the same dangerous path. The premonition wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a warning, a chilling whisper from the grave. The premonition wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a warning, a chilling whisper from the grave. Jessica's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear. She snatched her phone, her fingers fumbling over the screen, desperate to call Michael. One ring, two, three, straight to voicemail. She tried again, and again. Each unanswered call tightened the knot in her stomach, making her feel cold despite the warmth of the summer evening. Where was he? What had he found? She paced the living room, the quiet house amplifying her anxiety. Every shadow seemed to lengthen. Every creak of the old floorboards sounded like a footstep. Michael had been so consumed, so distant these past few weeks. His late-night research, the hushed phone calls, the way his eyes would flicker with a strange mix of excitement and unease whenever the HO was mentioned. He dismissed her concerns, called them overactive imagination, but now, the pieces were snapping into place with terrifying clarity. Sarah's death, the mysterious clause, the sudden disappearances of other residents Michael had hinted at. It all pointed to something far more sinister than a typical neighborhood dispute. Jessica stopped in front of the fireplace, her gaze falling on the framed photograph of her and Michael, taken on their wedding day. They were laughing, full of hope and dreams for their future. Now that future felt precarious, threatened by an unseen enemy lurking within the manicured lawns and perfectly painted fences of Oakhaven. She couldn't just sit there, waiting for a call that might never come. She had to act. Her mind raced back to their conversation just yesterday morning. Michael had mentioned a box of Sarah's personal effects, left behind in the attic by the previous owners, supposedly nothing important, just sentimental junk. But Michael had been insistent on going through it, convinced there might be something Sarah had hidden, something that the HOA wouldn't want found. At the time, Jessica had thought it was just another one of his wild goose chases. Now it felt like the most crucial lead they had. The attic. It was the logical place to start. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Jessica climbed the pull-down stairs to the attic hatch. The air up there was thick and still, carrying the scent of old wood and dust. A single bare bulb cast a dim, yellowish glow over the jumble of forgotten items. Old suitcases, holiday decorations, a broken exercise bike. She scanned the dusty corners until her eyes landed on a sturdy cardboard box tucked away behind a stack of faded photo albums. It was labeled in elegant cursive, Sarah's keepsakes. Her hands trembled as she pulled the box out. It was heavier than she expected. She carried it carefully down the stairs, placing it on the dining table, feeling a strange mix of apprehension and determination. This wasn't just about Sarah anymore. It was about Michael, about their safety, about uncovering the truth that Oakhaven desperately wanted to bury. She lifted the lid. Inside, she found a collection of seemingly mundane items. A pressed flower from a wedding bouquet, a collection of delicate porcelain thimbles, a worn copy of a classic novel, and a small leather-bound journal. Jessica picked up the journal first. It was undated, but the handwriting was neat and consistent. She flipped through the pages, her heart sinking with each entry. It was Sarah's diary, a chronicle of her life in Oakhaven. The initial entries were typical, filled with observations about gardening, friendly encounters with neighbors, and complaints about the HOA's strict rules regarding lawn maintenance and paint colors. But as Jessica delved deeper, the tone shifted. Subtle hints of unease began to appear. August 14th. Mrs. Henderson from 2 doors down moved out today. So sudden. No farewells. Her house was empty this morning. Just like that. The HOA sent a notice about new landscaping requirements before the moving van was even out of sight. Efficient, I suppose. September 3rd. Had coffee with David and Emily today. They seemed different. Quiet. Emily kept glancing at the window. Said they were thinking of selling. But they just moved in last year, so excited about Oakhaven. David just nodded, didn't say much. Very unlike him. Jessica's eyes darted across the pages, searching for anything concrete. Anything that explained Sarah's fear, Michael's obsession, or the chilling phrase death clause. The entries grew more paranoid, more desperate. October 12th. I feel watched. Every time I step outside, I feel eyes on me. Is it just my imagination? The HOA meetings have become so tense. Mr. Harrison, the president, has this way of looking at you like he knows your deepest secrets. And the rules, they're becoming more restrictive. It's suffocating. November 5th. I found it. The clause. Buried deep within the addendum. It's not just a fine, it's a forfeiture. A complete forfeiture of property and all assets, should one fail to comply with certain irreparable breaches of community harmony. Irreparable breaches? What does that even mean? And a clause about voluntary relinquishment of claim in event of incapacitation or permanent absence. It's convoluted, but the implications are terrifying. It feels like they own us body and soul. Jessica gasped, her breath catching in her throat. This was it. The death clause. But it wasn't explicitly about death. It was about incapacitation or permanent absence. A chilling euphemism. It didn't mention death directly, but the outcome was the same. The HOA taking everything. This wasn't just a legal document, it was a weapon. She continued reading, her heart pounding. November 18th. Michael was right. The clause isn't just for non-compliance. It's for dissent. For anyone who questions them. I saw it in the expression of that new couple, the Millers. They tried to organize a petition against the new fencing regulations. A week later, their house was listed. Gone. Just like Mrs. Henderson. Just like David and Emily. They all moved. But did they? Or were they made to move? Jessica froze. Michael. Sarah had written his name. It must have been a different Michael, perhaps a neighbor or an acquaintance. But the similarity was jarring. Sarah had known someone named Michael who was also investigating the HOA. Was it a coincidence? Or was there a deeper connection? She flipped to the very last entry, dated just 2 days before Sarah's official date of death. The handwriting was frantic, almost illegible. December 1st. They know I know. Mr. Harrison came to my door. He was polite, almost too polite. Said he just wanted to discuss community harmony violations. But his eyes, he knows. He knows I've been asking questions. He knows I've been talking to him. I can't trust anyone. I've hidden the proof. It's not safe here. If anything happens to me, look in the garden. Under the old oak tree. The truth is buried there. They can't take everything. Not the truth. The journal ended there. Jessica stared at the words, a cold dread seeping into her bones. Under the old oak tree. Sarah had hidden something. Proof. And she'd mentioned someone, him. Could it be the same Michael? The previous Michael, the one who was also investigating? The one Michael, her husband, had been trying to find information about? She closed the journal, her hands shaking. This was far worse than she could have imagined. Sarah hadn't just died, she had been silenced. And Michael, her Michael, was following in Sarah's footsteps, digging into the same dangerous secrets. Suddenly, a faint noise from outside made her jump. A rustle in the bushes, followed by the soft crunch of gravel. Her head snapped up, her eyes darting towards the window. The streetlights cast long, eerie shadows. Nothing seemed out of place, yet an acute sense of being watched prickled her skin. Had someone seen her bring the box down? Had someone been listening? She remembered Michael's hushed warnings about the HOA's reach, their ability to monitor residents. He joked about their eyes everywhere, but now it didn't feel like a joke, felt like a chilling reality. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Jessica knew she had to get out of the house. She had to find Michael, and she had to retrieve whatever Sarah had buried under that old oak tree. It was the only way to truly understand the depth of Oakhaven's darkness and perhaps the only way to save Michael. But as she stood there, clutching Sarah's journal, a new terrifying thought pierced through her fear. If Sarah knew they were watching, and she still ended up dead, what chance did Jessica or Michael have against an organization that could enforce a death clause without leaving a trace? The truth was buried, yes, but those who sought it risked being buried with it. And Michael, wherever he was likely already in grave danger. The chilling realization settled over her like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. Jessica's breath hitched. A silent gasp caught in her throat. Michael, in grave danger. The words echoed, not just in her mind, but in the sudden, oppressive silence of her own home. She fumbled for her phone, fingers clumsy with a fear she hadn't known since childhood. She dialed Michael's number. The repetitive ring, a cruel, mocking soundtrack to her rising panic. Once, twice, 3 times. It went straight to voicemail. "Hey, it's Michael. You know the drill." His voice, usually so steady and reassuring, now sounded distant, almost ghostly. Jessica hung up, her heart hammering against her ribs. She tried again and again, each attempt met with the same automated message. The dread intensified, a cold, creeping sensation that began in her stomach and spread rapidly through her limbs. This wasn't like Michael. He always answered or at least called back within minutes. She sprang to her feet, a sudden burst of adrenaline overriding the paralysis of fear. She had to find him. She had to know. Snatching her keys, she practically ran out the door, the familiar suburban street suddenly seeming menacing under the dim glow of the streetlights. Every shadow seemed to lengthen. Every rustle of leaves sounded like a whispered threat. Her car sped through the quiet streets, the tires humming a desperate tune. Michael's house was only a few blocks away, but the drive felt eternal. When she finally pulled up to his curb, her headlights illuminated the familiar facade. Neat lawn, potted plants, a small American flag fluttering gently by the porch. Everything looked perfectly normal. Too normal. She killed the engine and sat for a moment, straining her eyes against the darkness. No lights were on inside. His car was in the driveway, a small detail that somehow amplified her unease. If he was just out, why wouldn't he answer his phone? Why wasn't he home? Pushing open her car door, she stepped out, the silence of the night pressing in on her. The air was still, heavy with an unspoken threat. She walked up his pathway, her footsteps unnaturally loud in the quiet. Reaching the front door, she noticed something. The small welcome mat, usually perfectly centered, was slightly askew. A tiny detail easily overlooked, but to Jessica it screamed disruption. She tried the doorknob. Unlocked. Her blood ran cold again. Michael was meticulous about locking his doors, especially at night. A shiver traced its way down her spine. Pushing the door open slowly, she peered into the darkened entryway. Michael! Her voice was barely a whisper, swallowed by the cavernous silence of the house. She stepped inside, her hand still on the doorknob, ready to slam it shut and flee. The house felt empty, not just unoccupied but vacated. A strange scent hung in the air, faint but distinct, like ozone after a storm, or perhaps something metallic. She flicked on the light switch. The living room sprang into view, pristine and orderly. No signs of struggle, no overturned furniture. Yet the sense of unease persisted. She moved through the house, her senses on high alert. The kitchen spotless. The dining room undisturbed. Upstairs the bedroom. bed neatly made, clothes put away. But on his bedside table, a half-empty glass of water, and next to it, a book, splayed open face down. A book he'd been reading, a thriller about corporate espionage. He never left books like that. He always finished a chapter or marked his page. Then she saw it. On the floor near the edge of the rug, a small silver object. It glinted under the soft light from the hallway. She crouched down, her heart pounding. It was a tiny USB drive, barely an inch long, almost swallowed by the dark weave of the carpet. This wasn't something Michael would just drop and leave. He was too organized, too careful. He must have dropped it in a hurry, or perhaps it had been dislodged. A new wave of fear mixed with a desperate flicker of hope. This was a clue. This was something. Clutching the USB drive, she ran back downstairs, her mind racing. She had to get this to a computer, see what was on it. Back in her own home, the familiar surroundings offered little comfort. She practically threw herself at her laptop, her hands shaking as she inserted the tiny drive. The screen flickered, a folder appeared. Oakwood Heights HO redacted. Her breath hitched. Redacted. Michael had been digging into the HOA. Just as she suspected, she double-clicked the folder, her eyes scanning the file names. There were dozens of documents. Meeting minutes, financial statements, property deeds. But nestled amongst them, a file titled Bylaw Amendment 7.3.2 Final Draft. She opened it, her gaze flying down the legalese, her heart sinking with every line. It was dense, convoluted, almost deliberately designed to be unreadable. But then a highlighted section, clearly marked by Michael. It outlined a clause, a deeply disturbing provision regarding community welfare and adherence to established covenants. It stated that any homeowner found to be acting in direct and persistent contravention of the community's foundational principles, thereby endangering the harmony and security of Oakwood Heights, could be subject to immediate and irreversible removal from the community, with all property rights forfeited. Irreversible removal. Forfeited property rights. The language was chillingly vague, but the implication was clear, especially when read in the context of the death clause rumor. It wasn't explicitly a death clause, not in so many words, but it was a clause that granted the HOA an alarming degree of power, allowing them to effectively disappear a person from the community, legally speaking, without any apparent recourse. And the foundational principles and harmony and security could be interpreted to mean anything they wanted. Michael had highlighted a specific subsection. It detailed the process: a closed-door arbitration, a unanimous vote by the board of directors, and then a transition protocol executed by a third-party compliance entity. No public record, no court oversight, no appeal. Just a decision and then quiet disappearance. Her stomach churned. This wasn't just a rumor. This was real. Michael had found the evidence, and he had paid the price. Her phone buzzed, startling her. She almost dropped the USB drive. It was an unknown number. Hesitantly, she answered. Jessica Miller? A smooth, calm voice, masculine, almost too polite. Yes, who is this? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. This is Arthur Finch, head of the Oakwood Heights Homeowners Association Board. I'm calling to inquire about a minor infraction. It seems your recycling bin was left out past the designated collection time this morning. A small matter, of course, but we do strive for uniformity. Jessica's blood ran cold for the third time that night. Her recycling bin? She had put it out this morning, yes, but she had brought it in immediately after collection. He was watching her. They were watching her. I brought it in, she stammered, trying to sound indignant, but her voice betrayed her fear. Of course, I'm sure you did, Arthur Finch replied, his tone still perfectly even, utterly devoid of warmth. Just a friendly reminder to maintain our community's high standards. Oh, and on a separate note, we haven't seen Michael Peterson around lately. Is everything quite all right with him? He missed a landscaping inspection appointment this afternoon. Jessica gripped the phone tighter, her knuckles white. I don't know, she lied, her voice barely a whisper. I haven't seen him. A pity, Finch said, a sigh that sounded almost practiced. We do hope he's well. We value all our residents. We want everyone to feel secure and at home here. The emphasis on secure and at home felt like a direct threat. Well, good night, Jessica. Do take care. The line clicked dead. Jessica stared at her phone, the screen dark, reflecting her own terrified face. He knew Michael was gone. He knew she was looking for him, and he was sending a message. She looked back at the laptop screen, the bylaw amendment 7.3.2 still open, its chilling words mocking her. Michael hadn't just discovered the truth, he had been swallowed by it. And now she was next. The Homeowners Association wasn't just enforcing rules, it was enforcing silence. And she, by trying to break that silence, had just painted a target on her own back. The question wasn't if they would come for her, but when and how. She was alone, isolated in a community that seemed idyllic on the surface, but harbored a terrifying, deadly secret beneath. Michael was gone, and she knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone that he hadn't left willingly. He had been removed, and she now held the evidence of how. But what good was evidence against an organization that could make people disappear without a trace, and then call to remind you about your recycling bin? The sheer audacity, the chilling normalcy of it all, was almost too much to bear. She had to find him. She had to expose this. But how? And what would it cost her? The night was long, and the shadows outside her window seemed to press closer, watching, waiting. The audacity, the chilling normalcy of it all was almost too much to bear. She had to find him. She had to expose this. But how? And what would it cost her? The night was long, and the shadows outside her window seemed to press closer, watching, waiting. The first rays of dawn brought little comfort. The sun, usually a symbol of hope, now felt like an unwelcome spotlight, illuminating the terrifying truth of her situation. Jessica rose, her body stiff with a fear that had seeped into her bones. She needed to act, but every instinct screamed caution. Her first attempt was simple, desperate. She called David's phone again and again, straight to voicemail. She sent texts, short and urgent. No reply. His digital footprint, which had been active just days before, now seemed to have vanished. She tried searching for him online, looking for any recent posts, any family members she might contact. Nothing. It was as if David Miller had been systematically erased. The efficiency of it was terrifying. She picked up the Harmony Creek bylaws again, the thick, heavy binder feeling like a lead weight in her hands. She flipped back to the section on property reassignment and community betterment. The language was dense, intentionally vague, yet now, through the lens of David's disappearance, it screamed its true intent. In the event of a resident's untimely demise within the community, all property assets shall revert to the HOA for immediate liquidation, with proceeds allocated to community betterment and administrative costs, pending a full internal review. The phrase untimely demise echoed in her mind. Not natural death, not accidental death, but untimely. And internal review, a chilling substitute for a police investigation, a coroner's report, or any external scrutiny whatsoever. It was a perfectly crafted legal loophole, designed to swallow lives and property whole, without leaving a trace. She knew she couldn't go to the police yet. What would she say? My neighbor vanished, and I think our HOA killed him because of a clause in our bylaws that lets them take his house? They would dismiss her as paranoid, perhaps even refer her for a psychological evaluation. She needed proof, something tangible. Her thoughts turned to David's house just 2 doors down. From her window, it looked unervingly pristine. The blinds were drawn, the lawn perfectly manicured, a testament to the HOA's strict aesthetic codes. There were no signs of struggle, no broken windows, no kicked-in doors. This suggested either David had left willingly, which contradicted his frantic warnings, or he had been taken or perhaps persuaded to leave without any visible resistance. The latter thought sent a cold dread through her. As she scanned the street, her eyes caught on a white van parked several houses down. Tinted windows, no company logo. It had been there yesterday, she realized, and the day before. Coincidence? Or was it what she feared? She felt a prickle on the back of her neck, the distinct sensation of being watched. She saw Mrs. Henderson, 2 houses down, meticulously watering her petunias, but her gaze seemed to linger on Jessica's house for a beat too long before she quickly looked away, a tight, almost fearful smile on her lips. Jessica knew she couldn't risk approaching David's house directly in broad daylight. She needed another angle, a way to gather information without alerting the ever-present eyes of Harmony Creek. She remembered David mentioning a prized collection of antique coins, kept in a special safe. He was meticulous, almost obsessive about his possessions. If he had truly vanished, those coins would still be there, unless someone had already cleaned out his house. The silence of her house was abruptly broken by the shrill ring of her phone. An unknown number. She hesitated, her heart thumping against her ribs. Taking a deep breath, she answered, "Miss Hayes? This is Mr. Thorne from the Harmony Creek Homeowners Association." The voice was smooth, deep, and utterly devoid of warmth. "We've noticed a slight discrepancy in your recent landscaping. Your azaleas, specifically the cluster near your front walkway, are encroaching on the common sidewalk by approximately 3 inches. We've sent a formal notice to your email. Please rectify this by end of day tomorrow, or a fine will be levied." Jessica's blood ran cold. Azaleas? She had checked them just yesterday. They were well within the boundaries. This wasn't about landscaping. This was a message. A warning. "Mr. Thorne," she managed, her voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I assure you my landscaping is fully compliant. Our records indicate otherwise. We have photographic evidence. Compliance is key, Ms. Hayes, for the harmony of Harmony Creek." The word harmony dripped with a sinister undertone. The line clicked dead. She immediately checked her email. There it was. An official notice, complete with a date-stamped photograph of her azaleas, clearly showing them 3 inches over the line. But the photo looked too perfect, too staged. When had it been taken? Had someone been on her property? The implication was clear. They were watching her, not just the azaleas. They knew she was poking around. The call, the email, the feeling of surveillance. It all coalesced into a chilling certainty. She couldn't trust anyone in Harmony Creek. She needed an outside perspective, a voice of reason untainted by the sinister undercurrents of the community. "Emily," she called her friend. "Hey, can you meet me for coffee? Something really weird is going on." Emily, sensing the urgency in Jessica's voice, agreed immediately. Jessica resolved to share only the bare minimum for now, just enough to convey the gravity of the situation without sounding completely unhinged. She needed a sounding board, an ally, before diving headfirst into the abyss. As she prepared to leave, a nagging detail caught her eye. A faint, almost imperceptible scratch on her front door frame, near the lock. It hadn't been there yesterday, and a tiny, almost microscopic chip of paint on the ground below it. Someone had tried to pick her lock, or at least tested it. Her paranoia surged, a wave of icy dread washing over her. She wasn't just investigating. She was being targeted. The drive to the coffee shop was a blur of rearview mirror checks. The white van was nowhere to be seen. Yet the feeling of unseen eyes tracking her every move persisted. At the coffee shop, Emily's concerned face offered a fleeting sense of relief. "What's going on, Jess? You sound incredibly rattled." Jessica took a deep breath, the words tumbling out in a rush. "It's David, my neighbor. He's disappeared. Completely vanished. And I think it has something to do with the HOA." Emily's brow furrowed. "Disappeared? Like moved away?" "No, like gone. And I think the HOA is involved. He was terrified of them, warned me about their power, and then he just, poof, gone." She carefully omitted the death clause for now, focusing instead on the HOA's unusual control over property and the recent thinly veiled threat she had received. "They sent me a warning today about my azaleas." It was a thinly veiled threat, Emily. "They know I'm looking into David." Emily looked skeptical, yet her concern was evident. "Jess, are you sure you're not overthinking this? HOAs can be strict, but vanished? That's a huge leap." "I know it sounds crazy," Jessica admitted, her voice tinged with desperation. "But David was genuinely terrified. And now he's gone. And I'm getting these messages. This isn't just a strict HOA, Emily. This is something else." "What kind of messages?" Jessica recounted the chilling call from Mr. Thorne and the meticulously crafted email. Emily's expression hardened. "Okay, that's definitely creepy. But still a disappearance. Do you have any proof?" "No, not yet. That's why I need help. I need to find out what happened to David. I think his house might hold clues. But I can't just break in. And I can't go to the police without something concrete. What if the HOA has them in their pocket too? What if they've already handled it?" Jessica shuddered. "I need something they can't dismiss." Emily thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, look. I'll help you research HOAs, their powers, any strange cases. I'll search for anything about Harmony Creek online, any red flags. But you have to promise me you won't do anything reckless, Jess. This sounds dangerous." Jessica nodded. A silent promise she knew she might not be able to keep. She was already in too deep. Back in her house, the feeling of being watched was almost unbearable. She closed all her blinds, double-checked every lock, every window. She tried to think like David. What would he have done? Where would he have hidden something important if he knew he was in danger? He was meticulous, particular about his important documents. He had mentioned a waterproof safe. She walked through her own house, trying to imagine a secret hiding spot. Under a loose floorboard? In the attic? Behind a wall? Then, a memory surfaced. David, a passionate gardener, had once joked about enriching the soil with more than just compost. He had a quirky sense of humor, often spoke of his garden as his sanctuary, his place of secrets. He was particularly proud of a rare perennial bush, a species he called his legacy. What if he had buried something under that bush? A flash drive? A hidden note? It would be a logical place, not easily disturbed, and a deeply personal marker for him. It was a desperate idea, born of paranoia and a frantic need for answers, but it was the only lead she had. Getting into David's garden, however, would be incredibly risky. Mr. Thorne's call was proof they were watching. She needed a plan, a distraction. Tomorrow, she decided, she would make a show of rectifying her azaleas, working visibly in her front yard, seemingly compliant. And while she was outside, she would observe David's house, look for an opportunity, perhaps under the cover of darkness. The thought sent shivers down her spine. Breaking into her neighbor's property, even for answers, felt like crossing a dangerous line. But what choice did she have? David's life, or what was left of it, might depend on it. Her own safety might depend on it. The shadows outside her window, once just shadows, now seemed to hold a tangible menace, confirming that she was utterly alone in this fight. And every move she made was under scrutiny. The game had begun, and Jessica was playing for stakes higher than she had ever imagined. The immediate rush of adrenaline that had seized Jessica began to recede, replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. She wasn't going to be a victim, not without a fight. The first thing she did was methodically check every lock on every window and door, not just once but twice. She drew all the blinds, creating a physical barrier against the prying eyes she felt everywhere. The house, which had felt like a sanctuary just weeks ago, now felt like a cage, albeit one she was determined to fortify from the inside. Her mind raced, replaying Michael Chen's tragic accident, the chilling conversation with David, and the unnerving certainty that she was being watched. They weren't just watching, they were waiting for her to slip, to make a mistake, to give them the opportunity to enforce their twisted claws. She couldn't go to the police. What would she say? My homeowners association has a death clause, and I think they're after me? Without concrete evidence, it would sound like a paranoid delusion, and she'd be dismissed, perhaps even flagged, making her even more vulnerable. No, she had to fight this herself, and she had to be smarter, subtler, and faster than them. Her immediate goal was clear: gather proof. Proof of the death clause, proof of its enforcement, and proof that Michael Chen's death, and likely others, were anything but accidental. She pulled out her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Where to start? The internet was a vast ocean of information, but also a swamp of misinformation. She decided to focus on the community itself. She searched for Harvest Creek HOA problems, Harvest Creek unusual deaths, Harvest Creek homeowner complaints. The initial results were mundane. Complaints about landscaping, parking, architectural review board decisions. Nothing about sinister clauses or suspicious fatalities. Frustration gnawed at her, but she pushed it down. They were too organized, too powerful to leave obvious digital breadcrumbs. She broadened her search, looking for historical news archives related to the area. She spent hours, her eyes scanning old local newspaper articles, municipal records, anything that mentioned property disputes or unusual incidents in Harvest Creek. The night wore on, the silence of her house punctuated only by the soft hum of her laptop and the frantic beat of her own heart. Around 3 in the morning, a faint flicker of possibility appeared. An old forum post from a defunct local community board, dated almost 10 years prior, caught her eye. The thread was titled "Strange Occurrences in Harvest Creek. Anyone else notice?" Most of the replies were dismissive, blaming local wildlife or teenage pranks. But one reply, posted by a user named Concerned Citizen 77, stood out. "It's not pranks. People disappear or have accidents, especially if they push back against the HOA. They have eyes everywhere. Be careful what you say. The thread quickly devolved into arguments, with other users accusing Concerned Citizen 77 of paranoia or spreading rumors. The user never posted again after that thread. It was vague, unprovable, but it resonated with a chilling familiarity. Jessica copied the text and the username, a tiny piece of the puzzle. It wasn't much, but it was something. It confirmed that the idea of a sinister HOA wasn't entirely new or unique to her. Her next target was Michael Chun. She needed to know everything she could about him. She searched for his name, looking for obituaries, social media profiles, anything that might shed light on his life and, more importantly, his death. She found a brief obituary, mentioning his love for gardening and his quiet life. He had no immediate family listed, a detail that struck her as particularly convenient for an organization looking to silence someone without repercussions. She then shifted her focus to property records. She accessed public databases, looking for previous owners of her house and other properties in Harvest Creek that had changed hands unusually quickly after a death. It was a tedious process cross-referencing names and dates, but she had a strange feeling she was on the right track. She found a pattern. Several homes had been sold shortly after the death of their owners, often at prices slightly below market value, and always to new residents from outside the immediate area. It wasn't hard proof of foul play, but it suggested a well-oiled machine, quietly acquiring properties. Exhaustion finally forced her to bed as dawn approached, but sleep was elusive. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside, sent a jolt of fear through her. She was hyper-aware, her senses on high alert. The next morning, Jessica tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy. She went through her routine, but with an underlying current of vigilance. She decided to take a walk, not just for exercise but to observe. She needed to see who was watching her, or at least who could be watching her. As she walked past neatly manicured lawns and identical houses, she noticed subtle things. A window blind twitching as she passed. A car parked down the street that seemed to linger a little too long. It could have been her paranoia, but now every interaction felt charged. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was an email from the Harvest Creek HOA. Her heart leaped into her throat. She opened it, her fingers trembling slightly. It wasn't a threat, not directly. It was a courtesy reminder about a new landscaping regulation, requiring all homeowners to replace certain non-native plants with approved drought-resistant alternatives by the end of the month. Failure to comply would result in a substantial daily fine. Jessica looked at her own garden, a riot of colorful non-native flowers that she loved. It was a new rule, clearly designed to be an immediate burden, another layer of control. And it felt personal. It was a test, a gentle squeeze to see if she would buckle. She returned home, feeling the weight of the HOA's omnipresence. They weren't just watching. They were actively trying to provoke her, to wear her down. But this new rule also gave her an idea. If they were so obsessed with rules, perhaps they kept meticulous records. And perhaps, somewhere in those records, there was a clue about the death clause or its enforcement. Jessica remembered the physical HOA office. It was a small, unassuming building near the community entrance, typically staffed during business hours. A public-facing office meant public records, right? She knew she couldn't just waltz in and demand to see files on deceased homeowners, but maybe she could find a reason to be there, to observe, to gain access to something innocuous that might contain a hidden detail. She formulated a plan. She would go to the HOA office under the guise of inquiring about the new landscaping rule. While there, she would try to subtly observe the office layout, the filing system, and the staff. She needed to find a way to access their archives, even if it was just a brief moment to glimpse a document. The next day, armed with a carefully crafted list of questions about the new landscaping regulations, Jessica drove to the HOA office. Her palms were sweating, but her expression remained neutral, projecting an image of a slightly annoyed but compliant homeowner. Inside, the office was small and sterile, decorated with framed photos of smiling families enjoying the community amenities. Behind a desk sat a woman in her late 50s, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, her glasses perched on her nose. Her name tag read Brenda. Brenda looked up, her smile polite but distant. "Can I help you?" Brenda asked, her voice flat. "Yes, hello," Jessica began, forcing a pleasant tone. "I'm Jessica Miller from 1422 Evergreen Lane. I received the notice about the new landscaping requirements, and I just had a few questions. It seems quite sudden. And I'm a bit concerned about the cost and the specific plant varieties. Brenda listened, nodding occasionally, her gaze unreadable. She pulled up a document on her computer. Yes, Ms. Miller. The board voted on this last month. It's part of our initiative for sustainable community living. All the approved plants are listed here, along with nurseries offering discounts to Harvest Creek residents. Jessica feigned interest, asking detailed questions about soil types and watering schedules, all while her eyes darted around the office. There were filing cabinets against one wall, labeled alphabetically. One of them read Resident Records. Another was simply Archives. Her heart quickened. As Brenda patiently answered her questions, Jessica noticed a small, old-fashioned ledger peeking out from under a stack of papers on Brenda's desk. It looked out of place in the otherwise digital office. It was bound in dark leather, worn at the edges, and seemed to be handwritten. Her instincts screamed that it was important. "Excuse me," Brenda said suddenly, her phone ringing. "Just a moment." She picked up, turning slightly away from Jessica, her voice dropping to a low murmur. This was her chance. Jessica subtly shifted closer to the desk, pretending to examine a brochure about community events. Her eyes darted to the ledger. She could make out a column of names, followed by dates, and then a cryptic notation. As Brenda mumbled on the phone, Jessica leaned in further, her heart pounding. The top visible name was Chun Michael. Next to it, a date and then a single chilling word. Resolved. Jessica froze. Resolved. Not deceased, not moved, but resolved. It was too cold, too clinical, too deliberate. Her mind raced, connecting the dots. This ledger wasn't just a record. It was a register of their victims. Just as she was about to try and glimpse more, Brenda hung up the phone. "Sorry about that, Miss Miller," she said, turning back, her gaze sharp. "Now where were we?" Brenda's eyes flickered to the ledger, and with a swift, almost imperceptible movement, she slid it further under the pile of papers, out of sight. A faint, knowing smile played on her lips, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Jessica felt a wave of icy dread wash over her. Brenda knew. Brenda had seen her looking. The game wasn't just being played. It was being watched, and every subtle move Jessica made was being countered. She had found a piece of the puzzle, but in doing so, she had revealed her hand, and the smile on Brenda's face was a chilling confirmation that she was now even deeper in their crosshairs. The air in Brenda's office had grown thick with a silent, menacing triumph. Jessica felt the weight of it press down on her, an invisible hand pushing her against the wall. Brenda's smile, thin and sharp, was a predator's acknowledgement of a cornered prey. Jessica had revealed her hand, and the game had just turned deadly serious. She walked out of the community center, the setting sun casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to writhe and follow her. Every rustle of leaves, every distant car passing by, sounded amplified, sinister. The idyllic peace of Havenwood had shattered, replaced by a pervasive sense of dread. She was no longer an investigator, she was a target. Back home, David was in the kitchen making dinner. The aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air, a stark contrast to the icy fear that had taken root in Jessica's chest. He looked up, a casual smile on his face, but it faltered the moment he saw her. "Jess? What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." She didn't answer immediately, instead walking past him to the window, peering out into the darkening street. Was that a car driving by slowly? Or was it just her imagination, inflamed by Brenda's chilling gaze? "It's worse than I thought, David," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. She recounted the confrontation with Brenda, the dismissal of her questions, and the chilling implication that she was now firmly on the HOA's radar. "She knew, David. She knew I was looking into it. She practically admitted it without saying a word. That death clause, it's real. And they're protecting it." David turned off the stove, his face etched with concern. He walked over and gently placed his hands on her shoulders, turning her to face him. "Okay, slow down. What exactly did she say? Did she threaten you?" "Not directly. It was in her eyes, her tone, the way she smiled. It was a warning, David. Promise. I've stirred the hornet's nest, and I think they're about to swarm." Her voice trembled. "She knows I know about the properties, about the pattern, and I think she knows I'm looking for the proof." David's skepticism had finally cracked. The casual dismissal of her obsession was gone, replaced by a grim understanding. "So what now? We can't just sit here." We need to go to the police. Jessica shook her head. And tell them what? That the HOA president gave me a creepy look and didn't answer my questions about a phantom death clause? They'd laugh us out of the precinct. We have no proof, David. Just a gut feeling and a pattern of suspiciously cheap property sales after old residents die. Then we find the proof, David said, his jaw set. If this death clause is how they're acquiring properties, there has to be a paper trail. Something in the original HOA documents, an old amendment, a legal dispute, something. That night, sleep was a distant luxury. Every creak of the house, every rustle outside, sent a jolt of adrenaline through Jessica. She lay awake, her mind racing, replaying Brenda's words, her expression. She had to find something concrete. The next morning, armed with a fresh resolve, Jessica decided to broaden her search. The current HOA wouldn't give her anything. She needed to look outside their sphere of influence. She started with the Havenwood Public Library, hoping to find archived local newspapers from decades past. Perhaps there had been an article about the community's founding, or an old lawsuit involving the HOA. Days blurred into a monotonous cycle of searching. She sifted through microfiche, scanned digital archives, and pored over old property records at the county clerk's office. She found plenty of mundane information: zoning changes, building permits, transfer deeds. But nothing about a death clause. Nothing that explicitly linked the HOA to the suspicious acquisition of properties. It was as if the paper trail had been meticulously scrubbed. The intimidation began subtly. A car parked across the street for a little too long. A package delivered to their doorstep, containing nothing but a single withered rose. An email from an unknown sender, with the subject line "Curiosity Kills." No direct threats, no names, just enough to keep her on edge, to remind her that she was being watched. David dismissed the rose as a prank, the email as spam, but Jessica knew better. It was Brenda's way of playing her hand. One afternoon, while sifting through a stack of old property tax records at the county office, a name caught her eye: Eleanor Vance. The address was just a few blocks from theirs. She remembered seeing a for sale sign on that house a few years ago, before they moved in. The records for Eleanor Vance's property showed a series of unusual transactions. The house had been sold to a holding company, then immediately to a different entity, and then finally to a new family, all within a matter of months, with significantly escalating prices. The initial sale from Eleanor Vance had been shockingly low. Jessica remembered Eleanor Vance. She was an elderly woman, a longtime resident, who had moved out of Havenwood a couple of years prior, shortly after her husband passed away. Jessica vaguely recalled David mentioning that Eleanor had seemed a bit off during the move, almost as if she was being rushed. A flicker of an idea sparked. What if Eleanor Vance had been one of them? A victim of the death clause, but one who had survived the initial acquisition? Jessica found Eleanor Vance's new address through an online public records search. It was a smaller, modest apartment complex in a town about an hour away. Without telling David, fearing he would try to dissuade her, Jessica drove out there the next day. Eleanor Vance was frail but sharp, her eyes holding a deep, lingering sadness. She invited Jessica in, her apartment filled with the scent of lavender and old books. Jessica introduced herself as a new resident of Havenwood, expressing a general interest in the community's history. Havenwood, Eleanor mused, a faraway look in her eyes. It used to be such a lovely place. Quiet, friendly. Before the change. Jessica leaned forward. What change, Mrs. Vance? Eleanor sighed. The HOA used to be a small volunteer thing. Just neighbors looking out for each other. Then, about 15 years ago, a new board took over. Brenda Thorne, Robert Miller, Michael Jenkins. They were aggressive. They started changing the rules, demanding more. And people started dying. Jessica's heart hammered. Dying? Oh yes. Old Mr. Henderson down the street fell down his stairs. Mrs. Rodriguez, a sudden heart attack. And then my poor Arthur. He was so healthy, but after his diagnosis, he just faded so fast. And the moment he was gone, the HOA was there. Like vultures. Eleanor's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. They said we had signed a clause. A community recapture agreement, they called it. Said it was in the original bylaws, but I never remembered signing anything like that. A community recapture agreement? Jessica repeated, a cold dread washing over her. Yes. They made it sound like it was for the good of the community, to ensure properties didn't fall into disrepair. They claimed it gave the HOA the right to purchase the property at a fair market value. Their fair market value, mind you. If a sole homeowner passed away or if the remaining spouse was deemed unable to maintain the property. They said it was a contingency for the good of Havenwood. But it was a lie. They pressured me, Jessica. Told me if I didn't sell, they'd slap me with fines for every little thing, make my life a living hell. They knew I was alone, scared, and grieving. Eleanor's eyes welled up. They bought my house for a pittance, a fraction of what it was worth. And then, a few months later, I saw it listed for triple the price. That's when I knew. They weren't protecting the community. They were preying on it. Did you ever see the actual document? The community recapture agreement? Jessica asked, her voice tight with urgency. Eleanor shook her head. They showed me a paper, yes. But it was just a few lines, very vague. They kept saying it was part of the master deed, signed by all homeowners. But I never saw the whole thing. My lawyer, a young man, he tried to fight it, but they buried him in paperwork, threatened him with litigation. Said I'd lose everything. So I gave up. I took what they offered and left. Jessica felt a surge of both terror and vindication. This was it. This was the death clause. Not a literal clause causing death, but a predatory legal mechanism, cleverly disguised and aggressively enforced, designed to seize properties from vulnerable residents. The death was merely the trigger. And the HOA wasn't just enforcing it. They were actively creating the conditions for it, targeting the elderly, the sick, the lonely. Mrs. Vance, Jessica said, her voice firm, do you remember the name of that lawyer? Or any of the specific documents they showed you? Eleanor thought for a moment. His name was Daniel Albright. He had a small office downtown. And the document, it had a really old official-looking seal on it. It referenced something about founding articles and a special covenant for community preservation. But I don't remember much more. It was all a blur of grief and fear. Jessica thanked Eleanor, her mind reeling. Daniel Albright. Founding articles. Special covenant. This was the lead she needed. The pieces were finally locking into place, forming a terrifying picture of a sophisticated, ruthless operation. The HOA wasn't just a nuisance. It was a criminal enterprise, using the veneer of community governance to orchestrate a systematic scheme of property theft. As Jessica drove away, the fear returned, sharper now, more defined. She had found a crucial witness, a victim. But in doing so, she had stepped even further into the light, confirming her suspicions not just to herself, but to the very people she was investigating. She knew with chilling certainty that the HOA would not let this stand. They had their death clause, and she had just become their next potential target. The chilling certainty settled over Emily like a shroud woven from ice and fear. She was a target. The realization wasn't a slow burn but an immediate, visceral punch to the gut. Her mind, usually a fortress of logic and analysis, raced through 1,000 worst-case scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. She was no longer an investigator, she was prey. Her first instinct was to bolt, to run from Willow Creek, from the meticulously manicured lawns and the smiling, predatory faces of the HOA. But where would she go? They had her address, her history, her digital footprint. Running would only confirm her guilt in their eyes, and make her an easier mark. She had to fight. Her hands trembled as she secured the laptop, closing it with a definitive snap. The screen, moments ago a window into their insidious web, now felt like a beacon broadcasting her defiance directly to them. She unplugged it, then pulled the power cord from the wall. Every smart device in her home suddenly felt like a listening ear, a spying eye. The smart thermostat, the voice-activated assistant, even the Wi-Fi router. She systematically unplugged them all, plunging her house into a strange, unsettling silence. The only sound was her own ragged breathing and the frantic beat of her heart against her ribs. She moved from room to room, checking every window, every lock, double-checking the deadbolts. The familiar creaks of her old house, usually comforting, now sounded like approaching footsteps. She peered through the blinds, scanning the street. The streetlights cast long, dancing shadows, turning ordinary bushes into lurking figures. Was that car parked across the street new? Had it been there an hour ago? Her mind was playing tricks, or were they? The line between paranoia and justified fear was blurring rapidly. She needed to think, to plan. But the panic was a thick fog, clouding her judgment. She forced herself to sit, drawing a deep, shaky breath. What did she know? They orchestrated accidents. They had a system. And now she was in that system's crosshairs. Her phone vibrated on the table, a jarring intrusion in the sudden quiet. She jumped, her hand recoiling as if burned. Unknown number. She stared at it, her finger hovering over the screen. Was it a test? A warning? She let it ring, her muscles tensed, until it finally fell silent. The silence that followed felt heavier, more ominous than the ringing itself. She considered calling David. He was the only one who had shown any flicker of concern, any hint of shared doubt. But what if his phone was compromised? What if involving him now would only endanger him further, marking him as an accomplice to her insubordination? She couldn't risk it. She was alone, truly alone. The immediate objective shifted from gathering evidence to staying alive. But she couldn't just hunker down and wait. That was a losing strategy. She had to turn the tables, expose them before they could silence her. But how? What did she have that they didn't know about? Her mind drifted back to the fragmented financial records she glimpsed, the subtle anomalies in the HOA's budget, the disproportionate spending on community improvements that never seemed to materialize. And the land deals, the rapid turnover of properties after a resident's untimely demise. It wasn't just about maintaining property values, it was about profit, about control. The death clause wasn't simply a means of enforcing rules. It was a tool for expanding their empire, one tragic accident at a time. She needed proof that wasn't circumstantial. She needed the how. How were these accidents orchestrated? Was it a network of informants? Chemical agents? Mechanical sabotage? She remembered the details of each accident she had investigated. The faulty wiring, the sudden heart attack, the tragic fall. Each seemed so mundane, so random, yet together they formed a sinister tapestry. Emily paced her living room, her thoughts a whirlwind. She couldn't rely on digital means anymore. Her laptop was off, her phone a potential liability. She needed to go analog, old school. She pulled out a physical notebook and a pen, the scratch of the nib on paper a comforting, tangible sound. She started mapping everything out again, drawing connections, noting discrepancies. Her eyes fell on a small detail from one of her initial investigations. A specific type of sensor, an advanced, almost invisible environmental monitor that had been installed in several homes shortly before the residents' deaths. At the time, she dismissed it as an HOA initiative for energy efficiency. Now a cold dread snaked through her. What if those sensors were more than just monitors? What if they were triggers? The thought propelled her back to the window. She scanned the street again. This time she noticed it. A small, almost imperceptible red light blinking faintly on the lamppost directly across from her house. It wasn't part of the municipal lighting. It was too small, too deliberately placed. A camera? A listening device? Her blood ran cold. They were already watching. The next morning, Emily woke with a sense of grim determination. Sleep had been fitful, haunted by shadows and the imagined sounds of footsteps. Her house felt like a cage, but also paradoxically her last sanctuary. She dressed in dark, unassuming clothes, pulled her hair back tightly, and put on a baseball cap. She moved with a newfound stealth, her every action deliberate. She couldn't openly confront them. She couldn't even risk being seen gathering evidence. She needed to observe, to understand their methods without alerting them further. Her first target, Mr. Henderson's house. As president of the HOA, he was undoubtedly at the center of this web. Instead of driving, which could be easily tracked, Emily decided to walk, taking a circuitous route through the network of winding paths that crisscrossed Willow Creek. She knew these paths from her morning runs, every shortcut, every hidden hedge. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass, a deceptive veneer of suburban normalcy. As she approached Henderson Street, she kept to the shadows, using trees and parked cars as cover. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the serene backdrop of manicured lawns and pastel-colored houses. Henderson's house was a stately colonial, impeccably maintained, with a pristine garden. No obvious signs of surveillance, but she knew better now. She settled into a hidden spot behind a thick hedge across the street, pulling out a small pair of binoculars she'd found in her old camping gear. She watched. For hours she watched. Henderson's car was in the driveway. Lights were on inside. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The mundane nature of it was almost maddening. How could such evil operate behind such a facade of domestic tranquility? Then she saw it. A utility van, unmarked, pulled up 2 houses down from Henderson's. 2 men in plain work clothes got out. They weren't from the usual utility company she recognized. They carried a toolbox and a small nondescript device. They went to the house's electrical box, spent a few minutes there, then moved to the lamppost outside, attaching something small and dark near the top. They worked quickly, efficiently, then drove off. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had seen this before. The same kind of activity at other houses that had later become sites of accidents. It wasn't just a single sensor. It was a network, a system of infiltration, subtly woven into the very infrastructure of Willow Creek. They were installing, maintaining, and upgrading their surveillance and control mechanisms right under everyone's noses. The implications were chilling. These weren't just cameras. They were likely part of an elaborate system to manipulate environments, to trigger events, to create the perfect accident. The lamppost device, the electrical box tinkering, it was all part of the same insidious design. Her observation was interrupted by a sudden sharp noise. A branch snapped nearby. Emily froze, her eyes darting to the sound. She saw nothing, but the feeling of being watched intensified, a prickle on the back of her neck. Had she been too careless? Had they seen her? She had to move, but her legs felt like lead. She risked one last glance at Henderson's house. As she did, the front door opened. Mr. Henderson himself stepped out, not looking at her, but scanning the street, his gaze lingering for a moment on the lamppost where the men had just been. Then, he looked directly across the street, his eyes seemingly boring into the very hedge where she was hiding. A slow, knowing smile spread across his face, devoid of warmth, full of chilling triumph. Emily's blood ran cold. He knew. He absolutely knew. The branch snap hadn't been random. It had been a diversion. They had been waiting. She had walked right into their trap, confirming her presence, her suspicions, her defiance. She had just become an even bigger threat, and a far more immediate target. She scrambled backward, pushing through the dense foliage, the rustling sounds a desperate attempt to escape the invisible net that was tightening around her. She had a new piece of the puzzle, a terrifying insight into their methods, but the cost of that knowledge had just become lethal. The air tasted metallic with fear. A soft thwip sound sliced through the night, followed by a dull thud against the tree trunk inches from her head. A dart, its tip glinting faintly in the sparse moonlight, vibrated in the bark. A poison dart. This wasn't a warning. It was an execution attempt. Her breath hitched, a strangled gasp that she immediately swallowed, forcing herself to be silent. They weren't just watching, they were actively hunting her, and they weren't playing games. The rustling sounds around her intensified, not just the wind playing tricks, but the deliberate movement of bodies through the undergrowth. They were closing in. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat urging her to move, to run, to survive. Every instinct screamed. She scrambled back, away from the dart, deeper into the tangled mess of branches and thorny bushes, heedless of the scrapes and tears on her skin. Pain was a distant concept, overshadowed by the icy grip of terror. The death clause. It wasn't a metaphor. It was a literal act of policy. Mr. Henderson hadn't fallen from his ladder. He had been pushed or drugged or disoriented, made to look like an accident. The incidents, the misfortunes, the sudden disappearances, they were all meticulously orchestrated eliminations. And now she was next on their list. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow, clarifying the horror, sharpening the edges of her panic into a desperate resolve. She couldn't just run. She had to escape this death trap. She pushed through the dense foliage, the sounds of her pursuers growing fainter for a moment as she gained a small lead. But she knew it wouldn't last. They were professionals, silent and deadly, moving with an eerie precision that spoke of training and experience. This wasn't just a handful of disgruntled HOA members. This was an organized, lethal operation. Her mind raced, trying to piece together a plan. Her house was compromised. Her phone was likely being tracked, if not already dead. Who could she call? Who would believe her? "My HOA is trying to kill me because I found out about their death clause," sounded like the ravings of a madwoman. She was utterly alone, trapped within the perfectly manicured, yet utterly sinister confines of Whisper Creek. The air grew heavier, the silence between the rustles more profound, more menacing. She could feel their presence, a cold dread creeping up her spine. They were stalking her, enjoying the hunt. She remembered the hidden cameras, the sensors, the way Mr. Davies always seemed to know everything. They had eyes and ears everywhere. This entire community was their carefully constructed hunting ground. She burst out of a thicket, onto a narrow paved path that wound between two large, elegant homes. A street lamp cast a pool of sickly yellow light, momentarily exposing her. She froze, a deer caught in headlights. A sudden movement in the shadows at the end of the path. A figure, tall and indistinct, stepped into the light, then quickly retreated. No, not just one. She saw the glint of something metallic, a flash of dark clothing. They had her boxed in. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but a surge of defiant adrenaline pushed it back. She wasn't going to die here, not like Mr. Henderson, not like the others. She had to fight. But how? She had no weapon, no allies, no way out. Then a memory flashed through her mind. Mrs. Gable, the old woman who lived alone, always tending her roses, always complaining about the HOA's strict rules, but never doing anything about it. Mrs. Gable's house had a back gate that led directly into the public nature preserve beyond the community's official boundaries. A small, often ignored wooden gate, barely visible from the street, hidden by overgrown vines. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was her only chance. She veered sharply, abandoning the path and darting between the houses, sprinting across manicured lawns, ignoring the startled yelps of a small dog from behind a fence. She could hear them now, closer, their movements more urgent. They knew her objective. They knew the layout of Whisper Creek as intimately as she did, probably more so. Her lungs burned, her legs ached, but she pushed harder. The preserve. If she could just reach the preserve, she might have a chance. Out there, the rules of Whisper Creek didn't apply. Out there would be other people, hikers, dog walkers, a chance to blend in, to get help. She scrambled over a low stone wall, nearly tripping, her hands scraping against the rough surface. Ahead, through a gap in a hedge, she could see it, the back of Mrs. Gable's property. The rose garden, a riot of dark blooms under the moon. And beyond it, the faint outline of the wooden gate. A sudden sharp bark echoed behind her, closer this time. Not a small dog. A much larger, more menacing sound. They had brought dogs. Of course they had. They left nothing to chance. The gate seemed miles away. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her vision blurring at the edges. She could almost feel their hot breath on her neck, the cold steel of their intent. She reached the edge of Mrs. Gable's garden, stumbling through the thorny bushes, ignoring the tearing fabric of her clothes, the stinging scratches on her arms and legs. The gate. It was right there. A simple latch, rusted but still functional. She fumbled with it, her fingers clumsy with exhaustion and fear. The latch clicked, a small, hopeful sound in the terrifying silence. She shoved the gate open, revealing a narrow, overgrown dirt path leading into the darkness of the preserve. Freedom. Almost. But just as she was about to slip through, a hand clamped down on her shoulder, hard, stopping her cold. The grip was immense, unyielding. A wave of despair washed over her. She was caught. Going somewhere, Jessica? A calm, chilling voice asked from directly behind her. It was Mr. Davies. His voice was smooth, devoid of emotion, like a well-oiled machine. She could feel his presence, cold and implacable. Her heart plummeted. She had been so close. She twisted, trying to wrench free, but his grip was too strong. She saw him then, a dark silhouette against the moonlight, his face obscured by shadow, but his eyes, two glinting pinpricks, fixed on her. Behind him, two other figures emerged from the shadows, flanking him, their faces equally unreadable. They weren't wearing their usual friendly smiles now. They were hunters. "We can't have you spreading false rumors, can we?" Mr. Davies continued, his voice barely a whisper, yet it roared in her ears. "It disrupts the harmony of our community." Harmony? Jessica spat, finding a surge of unexpected defiance. "You call murder harmony? You killed Mr. Henderson. You're killers." A low chuckle escaped one of the figures behind Mr. Davies. It was a cold, humorless sound. "Mr. Henderson had an unfortunate accident," Mr. Davies corrected, his tone still unervingly calm. "Just like countless others who failed to adhere to the standards of Whisper Creek. You, Jessica, are about to have your own unfortunate accident." He tightened his grip, pulling her back from the gate. The darkness of the preserve, her only hope, seemed to recede, swallowed by the encroaching shadows of Whisper Creek. She struggled, kicking and flailing, but it was useless. They were too strong, too many. "No!" she screamed, a raw, desperate sound that tore through the night. "You won't get away with this. Someone will find out." Mr. Davies leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, so close she could feel his breath on her ear. "No one ever does, Jessica. That's the beauty of Whisper Creek. We are a self-regulating community. Every accident is meticulously planned, every trace erased. We ensure pristine living, even if it means pruning the deadwood." He gave a slight nod to one of the figures. Before Jessica could react, a cloth was pressed over her mouth and nose. A sweet, cloying odor filled her senses, burning her nostrils, making her head spin. Chloroform. Her struggles weakened, her vision tunneled. The world tilted, the rose garden blurring into a kaleidoscope of dark colors. Her legs gave out. As consciousness slipped away, the last thing she saw was the open gate to the nature preserve. A sliver of untamed wilderness beckoning just out of reach. The last thing she heard was Mr. Davies's voice, triumphant, chillingly calm. "Welcome to your final Homeowners Association meeting, Jessica." And then blackness. Complete, suffocating, silent blackness. The blackness peeled back, not into light, but into a murky, suffocating gray. Jessica's head throbbed, a dull, relentless drumbeat behind her eyes. Her mouth tasted like cotton and chemicals. She tried to move, but her wrists were bound tightly behind her, chafing against a rough wooden chair. A strip of thick tape covered her mouth, pressing uncomfortably against her lips. A cold, sterile smell filled the air, disinfectant mixed with something metallic, something like old blood. She was in a small, windowless room. The walls were bare concrete gray. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting harsh shadows. Then, a figure stepped into her blurry vision. Mr. Davies. He stood before her, impeccably dressed, a faint, almost pitying smile on his face. Behind him, she could make out the shapes of other HOA members. Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Peterson, even Michael's neighbor, David. Their faces were grim, uncomfortable but resolute. "Ah, Jessica," Mr. Davies said, his voice calm, almost soothing, yet utterly devoid of warmth. "You're awake. Good. We prefer our guests to be lucid for their final meeting." He gestured to the room around them. "This is our sanctuary, where we ensure the continued prosperity and purity of our beloved community. You see, Jessica, the death clause isn't merely about property values. That's the palatable lie we tell the newcomers, the naive ones who only see the manicured lawns and the excellent school district." He took a step closer, his eyes glinting. "It's about selection, evolution. We've created a perfect ecosystem here, a community free from the blight of financial instability, social deviance, or curiosity. Those who cannot contribute, those who disrupt the harmony, those who question our methods, they are simply recycled." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. Jessica struggled against her bonds, a futile, silent protest. The tape felt like it was suffocating her. Her mind, despite the lingering haze of the drug, was racing. She had to stay calm, observe, think. "You, Jessica," Mr. Davies continued, circling her slowly, "were a threat, a disruptive element. You dug too deep. You saw the cracks in our perfect facade. And in doing so, you compromised the very foundation of our existence. We cannot allow that." He stopped in front of her again, folding his hands. "The clause ensures that our community remains exclusive. It's a filtration system. Those who are truly valuable, truly compliant, understand and accept their role. They understand that to maintain this utopia, sacrifices must be made. Some volunteer, driven by a misguided sense of civic duty or sheer desperation for their families to remain in our haven. Others, like you, are simply removed." Jessica could feel the cold sweat trickling down her back. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She tried to focus, to find an edge, anything. Her eyes darted around the room, desperately searching. Then a flicker of hope, so faint she almost dismissed it. Tucked into the cuff of her left sleeve, a tiny, almost invisible bulge. Her micro-recorder. She had activated it as Mr. Davies approached her in the driveway, a desperate, last-ditch effort. Was it still on? Was it recording this chilling confession? She prayed it was. "Our community thrives because we are ruthless in our pursuit of perfection," Mr. Davies stated, his voice taking on a chillingly proud tone. "Every departure, every move, is a calculated decision. It's for the greater good, Jessica. For the longevity of our shared dream." He turned to the other HOA members. "Neighbors, we have reached a critical juncture. Jessica's actions have endangered us all. We must now proceed with the necessary steps to ensure the continued security of our community. All in favor of recalibration?" Slowly, reluctantly, hands began to rise. Mr. Henderson, his face pale, raised his hand. Mrs. Peterson, her eyes downcast, followed suit. Even David, Michael's neighbor, offered a shaky hand, avoiding Jessica's gaze. It was a unanimous, horrifying vote. Mr. Davies nodded, a flicker of triumph in his eyes. "Excellent. The consensus is clear." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, amber-filled syringe. "Now, Jessica, for your sake, I hope you have made peace with your choices." He moved towards her, the syringe glinting under the harsh light. Jessica's mind screamed. This was it. This was the end. But the sight of that syringe, the cold, clinical finality of it, ignited a spark of pure, desperate rage. She refused to go down without a fight. She remembered her recorder. If she was going to die, the truth had to get out. It had to. As Mr. Davies leaned in, ready to administer the injection, Jessica tensed every muscle. She knew her body was still heavy from the drugs, but adrenaline was a potent antidote. She let her head loll, feigning total surrender, her eyes fluttering as if losing consciousness. Mr. Davies paused, his brow furrowed slightly, perhaps sensing her resistance had finally broken. He lowered his guard just for a fraction of a second, bringing the syringe closer to her arm, his face mere inches from hers. That was all she needed. With a sudden explosive burst of energy, Jessica snapped her head forward, slamming her forehead into Mr. Davies's nose. A sickening crunch echoed in the small room. He cried out, a sharp, choked sound, stumbling backward, dropping the syringe. It shattered on the concrete floor, the amber liquid splattering. Chaos erupted. The other HOA members gasped, some stepping back in shock. Jessica didn't hesitate. She thrashed violently, using the momentum of the chair. She kicked out, catching Mr. Henderson in the shin. He yelped, clutching his leg. The chair, already unsteady, wobbled precariously. She slammed it against the wall repeatedly, using the sharp edge of a broken armrest to saw at her bonds. The rough rope began to fray. "Stop her!" Mr. Davies roared, clutching his bleeding nose, his calm veneer shattered. But the other members were hesitant, clearly not prepared for a physical struggle. They were administrators, not enforcers. David, Michael's neighbor, stood frozen, his eyes wide with fear. With a final desperate tug, Jessica's right wrist came free. Her skin was raw, burning, but she ignored it. She tore the tape from her mouth, gasping for air, and immediately reached for her left sleeve, pulling out the tiny micro-recorder. It was still blinking, still recording. Proof. She scrambled out of the chair, her legs wobbly, but she forced herself to move. She had to get out. She had to get this recording to the authorities. "She has evidence!" she screamed, her voice hoarse but filled with raw terror and defiance. "They're all in on it. They murder people." The accusation, shouted aloud, seemed to galvanize the others. Mr. Davies, wiping blood from his face, lunged for her. But Jessica was faster. She ducked under his outstretched arm, shoving Mrs. Peterson into his path. The elderly woman cried out as they collided, creating a momentary diversion. Jessica burst through the door she'd vaguely noticed earlier, a heavy, steel-plated fire exit. She slammed it shut behind her, plunging the room into further chaos. She found herself in a dimly lit corridor, a service tunnel beneath the community center. The air here was cooler, smelling of dust and stale air. She ran. Her bare feet slapped against the concrete, the pain a distant hum. She could hear shouts and footsteps pounding behind the door. They would be after her. They couldn't let her escape. She stumbled through a maze of pipes and wires, her heart thundering. She had to find an exit. She remembered the blueprints she'd studied, the layouts of the community center. There was a service entrance, leading to the back alley behind the main building. She pushed through a heavy metal door, blinking at the sudden rush of cool night air. She was outside in a narrow alleyway flanked by dumpsters. The community, usually so pristine, looked grimy and forgotten here. She ran, not looking back, her lungs burning, the micro-recorder clutched tightly in her hand. She sprinted down the alley, her mind fixed on one goal: her car. It was parked just a few blocks away, near the entrance to the community. She could hear distant shouts, the frantic cries of Mr. Davies and his accomplices. They were searching. Jessica burst out of the alley onto a quiet tree-lined street. The elegant houses loomed, their windows dark, their perfect facades hiding the monstrous truth. She didn't stop until she reached her car, fumbling for her keys with trembling hands. She jumped in, locking the doors, and started the engine. The roar of the engine was the sweetest sound she had ever heard. She sped away, leaving the manicured lawns and the dark secrets behind her. She drove for miles, her body shaking, the adrenaline slowly dissipating, leaving her weak and nauseous. Finally, she pulled over on the shoulder of a deserted highway, miles from the community. With shaking fingers, she pulled out her phone. She called Michael. His voice, when he answered, was groggy with sleep, but instantly sharpened when he heard her frantic tone. "Michael, I have it," she whispered, her voice raw. "I have everything. They confessed. All of it. The death clause. They tried to kill me." She could hear his sharp intake of breath. "Jessica, where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm safe for now," she said, tears finally streaming down her face. "But we have to go to the police. Now. I have the recording." The next few hours were a blur. The police, initially skeptical, listened with growing horror as Jessica played the crystal-clear recording of Mr. Davies's chilling confession and the HOA's unanimous vote. Her escape, her story, the missing residents. It all clicked into place. The community was raided before dawn. Mr. Davies, Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Peterson, and several other key members of the HOA were arrested. The perfect, pristine facade of the community shattered, revealing the rot beneath. The news spread like wildfire, a national scandal. The death clause became a horrifying headline, a chilling testament to how far some would go to maintain an illusion. Jessica was hailed as a hero, but the trauma ran deep. The images of Mr. Davies's calm, cruel face, the grim votes of the neighbors, the sterile room, they haunted her. The community she had once dreamed of calling home was now a monument to human depravity and the insidious nature of control. The investigation uncovered hidden records, secret compartments, and the grim truth about countless departures. The residents who had once lived in blissful ignorance or fearful compliance were left to grapple with the monstrous reality of their perfect neighborhood. Their property values plummeted, the illusion of their utopia irrevocably broken. Jessica never went back. She had exposed the truth, saved countless lives, and brought down a hidden tyranny. But the memory of the blackness, the suffocating silence, and Mr. Davies's chilling welcome to her final meeting would forever be etched into her mind. It was a stark reminder that sometimes, the most terrifying monsters wear the most respectable faces, and the most perfect communities hide the darkest secrets. And the price of that perfection for some was death.